I always thought that Hertz buying thousands of EVs for its rental business was going to be the worst decision in modern corporate history, but I now think that BP might pip it at the post. BP was originally known as British Petroleum because that's what it did, produced lots of oil and gas. Then it rebranded to make itself look all soft and fluffy and distance itself from these evil fossil fuels that had kept the entire company going for decades. With a new eco-friendly logo, its then CEO, the so perfectly named I couldn't have written it better, Bernard Looney, bravely announced in 2020 that it would divest itself from this filthy oil and gas and instead become a renewable energy giant. How's that working out for you, BP? The answer is very badly, as we'll see in this video. It's a timely reminder that everything green eventually turns brown and dies. Welcome back to MGUY, British engineer and lawyer, now Sydney-based YouTuber. If you enjoyed this video, please drop a like and let me know what you think by leaving a comment. And if you want to keep informed about all the EV and net zero insanity that we're suffering at the moment, click that subscribe button down below and enable notifications so you don't miss out on any future videos. You know, it's remarkable how gullible some of these huge corporate boardrooms can be. Like the auto manufacturers chucking out a century of research and development into amazingly clean and efficient combustion engines with nary a backward glance, thinking we'll all be driving milk floats by 2030, it's the same with some oil and gas companies that think the entire planet will turn on a dime and be magically powered by farts and sunbeams by a week next Tuesday. Just like combustion cars will be around for decades to come, so will the world's demand for oil and gas, which is unlikely to decline and will probably continue to increase, despite all the wailing and gnashing of teeth that we have to go net zero to save the planet. The Telegraph reports the gory details. How BP became the oil industry's biggest loser on net zero. The British energy giant faces a humiliating volte-face after its ruinous attempt to go green. It was meant to be the moment when one of Britain's most powerful companies broke decisively with its fossil fuel past. Addressing journalists and executives at the Royal Lancaster Hotel overlooking Hyde Park, Bernard Looney, BP's new chief executive, urged them to reimagine his company as a champion of green power. By 2030, BP would have cut oil and gas production by 40%, he pledged, with the lost fossil fuel income being replaced by wind farms, solar parks and biofuels made from plants. He said, BP has been an international oil company for over a century. Now we are pivoting to become an integrated energy company. We believe our new strategy provides a comprehensive and coherent approach to turn our net zero ambition into action. This coming decade is critical for the world in the fight against climate change. 5 years on from that speech in February 2020, the company is beleaguered by a ruthless activist investor under pressure to boost its flatlining share price and considering a return to the oil and gas exploration that made it so successful to begin with. The abrupt turn follows decades of crisis at one of Britain's most venerable institutions. Today, its future is even more uncertain than ever. The net zero plans unveiled by Looney have hammered profits and generated intense speculation about a takeover, breakup, or even a merger with arch-rival Shell. This month, the fears became real with revelations that Elliott, a Florida-based hedge fund and corporate raider, has built a £3.8 billion stake in BP and is laying siege to the company. On Wednesday, BP will face the ultimate test at its Capital Markets Day when Murray Auchincloss, the company's current chief executive, will seek to persuade sceptical investors that he can deliver a fundamental reset. To win round doubters, he is expected to announce a major break with the last 5 years, shifting away from net zero and back towards its oil and gas heritage. I mean, this whole thing is so utterly laughable, yet it was all dead serious. And this article in Renew Economy shows exactly how mad BP's plans really were. BP to abandon renewable targets, divest assets and shift back to fossil fuels. British oil and gas supermajor BP is expected to announce today its decision to scrap a previous target to ramp up renewable generation capacity 20-fold by 2030, returning instead to a focus on fossil fuels in an effort to mollify investors. BP's chief executive Murray Auchincloss will reportedly announce the strategic shift during the company's capital markets day on Wednesday, according to two anonymous sources speaking to Reuters. Reported as an effort to address investor concerns over earnings, which have underperformed those of its rivals in recent years, BP had already abandoned its goal to cut oil and gas output by the end of the decade and is now set to complete its about-face with a full-fledged return to fossil fuels. The British multinational announced in mid-2020 a plan to increase its low-carbon investment tenfold by 2030, resulting in a 20-fold increase in its renewable energy generating capacity by the same time, pushing BP's renewable generating capacity to around 50 gigawatts by the end of the decade. However, in 2021, BP had only 3.3 gigawatts of installed renewable generating capacity globally. In the company's 2024 earnings report, only 4 gigawatts of installed capacity was reported, with a further 8.2 gigawatts that had progressed to final investment decision, FID, and a development pipeline of 60.6 gigawatts. And the BBC, naturally, reports on all the climate crisis zombies that are crawling out of the woodwork to protest the announcement. The environmental group Greenpeace UK said the latest move was proof that fossil fuel companies can't or won't be part of the climate crisis solutions. Alexander Kirk from Global Witness added BP cannot be trusted to deliver the clean energy transition, adding that it was focusing on short-term profits to shareholders while energy prices were high, with the rest of the world picking up the tab from its climate-wrecking products. Global Witness drove a lorry around central London with messages criticising BP's decision. Well, Global Witness should be renamed Global Witless, and cue The Guardian bemoaning the intrusion of harsh reality into their eco-fantasy world. Matilda Borgstrom, a campaigner at the climate action group 350.org, said, "This move by oil giant BP clearly demonstrates why super-rich corporations and individuals chasing short-term profit for themselves and shareholders cannot be trusted with fixing the climate crisis or leading the transition to renewable energy we so badly need. Pumping money into more oil and gas increases the risk of climate impacts for us all, flies in the face of legal climate targets and, with the renewable sector growing exponentially, is a big risk to the shareholders that BP is so keen to please." These brainwashed climate activists, upper-class twits with names like Poppy and Archie, who are comfortably living off their parents or a generous trust fund, are completely insulated from the real world the rest of us have to live in. Whether they like it or not, unless you want to plunge the majority of the planet into abject poverty, fossil fuels will remain a part of the energy system for decades and decades to come. This fact is blatantly obvious to anyone with a functioning brain that hasn't been pickled in toxic green propaganda. But, amazingly, some of the smartest people on the planet can't see it, including world leaders and captains of industry, including the boss of BP. But once again, the fragile house of cards that they have built on these fantasy beliefs is no match for the stiff winds of reality. I'm sure an energy transition will take place at some point, not by way of the mad knee-jerk reaction and top-down mandates we have seen over the past decade, which has been driven entirely by the shameful scaremongering from the climate alarmist industry, but by a gradual, sensible shift towards alternatives. But that will take much longer than the net zero zealots will ever concede.